Hello. Thank you for your interest in 2024 Supportive Housing Fund requesting for service provider pre-qualification, also known as SHF RFPQ, and this webinar. In this information session, we will discuss the Supportive Housing Fund and overview of the RFPQ tender process. Before we start the webinar, we would like to acknowledge that BC Housing is located on the ancestral homelands of hundreds of Indigenous peoples and nations across British Columbia, each with their own unique traditions and history. At this location, we are on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, who have been the caretakers of these lands for thousands of years. We offer our respect to their peoples, past and present. In this information session, we will go over the Supportive Housing Fund as well as the Request for Pre-Qualification RFPQ tender process. In the program overview, we will cover the program background, principles, the goal, objectives, and key program elements. In the RFPQ overview, we will describe the RFPQ structure and go over the most critical parts of the RFPQ, including the deliverables, evaluation process and criteria, response template and supporting documents, submission locations, and tender schedule. Let's begin with an overview of the Supportive Housing Fund, starting with its background. Announced in 2018, the province launched the Building BC Supportive Housing Fund. Through 2018 and 2023, the province committed $2.3 billion in capital investments to deliver 5,700 supportive housing units. The purpose of the fund is to build and operate subsidized housing with 24/7 on-site supports for single adults, seniors, and people with disabilities who are experiencing homelessness or at risk. Supportive housing helps individuals move to more secure housing, achieving greater self-reliance, and meet personal goals. As of March 31, 2024, the province has invested over $1.2 billion in supportive housing fund projects, completing 2,334 units with 2,122 units underway. The Supportive Housing Fund has three main goals. 1. To break the cycle of homelessness by providing safe, affordable housing and the necessary supports. 2. To promote resident stability through non-clinical support services. And 3. To promote community partnerships in service delivery. Its objectives include to 1. Create and preserve safe and affordable housing with supports, and 2. Support communication, partnerships, and collaborative initiatives across the supportive housing sector. There are 8 supportive housing principles that guide the supportive housing program and fund. 1. Supportive housing is established in communities with demonstrated need. This is evidence-based through consultation with communities, various levels of government, and data sources. 2. Housing and supports are accessible and resident-focused. Housing and supports are designed to be accessible for all eligible residents, regardless of background or identity. BC Housing is committed to the principles and processes of reconciliation, equity, and diversity. This commitment ensures that tenant can pursue goals around housing, healthcare, income, and employment with dignity and respect. 3. Transparent and accountable operations. In order to create a transparent and accountable process, housing providers are required to maintain reliable records and fulfill regular reporting obligations in BC Housing's database. They need to adopt written policies and procedures that are responsive to resident needs, including a clear process for complaints and appeals. 4. Services are resident-focused. You can see the list of core support services required in Section 2.5 of the RFPQ document. These services help a diverse resident populations to live independently, with support services being provided on-site or through community resources. 5. The service environment is welcoming, safe, and secure. Our supportive housing providers prioritize health, safety, and security for all residents and staff, including women, men, transgendered individuals, women with children, couples, and families. In all developments, including co-ed ones, Women and gender-based safety will be a priority through safe access, shared spaces, sleeping areas, and privacy. 6. Increased affordable rental housing options. The provincial supply of affordable housing units is increased through partnerships with different levels of government, housing providers, and community partners. 7. Financial, physical, and environmental sustainability. BC Housing is committed to environmentally sustainable housing construction and management of housing. 8. Collaboration among project partners to improve program effectiveness. Program delivery is improved through collaboration between program partners and is reflective of needs assessments, strategic plans, best practices, and evidence-based research. The key program elements are resident eligibility, rent, support services, and operating and support services subsidies. Eligible individuals aged 19 and older with income at or below the housing income limits, HILs, experiencing homelessness or are at risk, qualify. Rent is typically rent geared to income, RGI, or a flat rent, rent on the door, that may be equivalent to the maximum income assistance shelter rate. Projects may vary, and this is outlined in individual operator agreements. Support services are provided to help residents maintain stability in housing, enhance access to other community-based supports and services, and foster resilience against homelessness. Support services are outlined in individual operator agreements and may include 24/7 on-site staff, 2 meals a day including 1 hot meal, access to free laundry facilities, resident supports including room decluttering, rent payment and repayment plans, culturally specific programs, support services such as life skills, community information, social and recreational programs, connecting residents to community for education and employment, health and wellness services, life skills, and independent housing options, case planning and resident needs assessment to meet personal and housing goals. In terms of subsidies, BC Housing will provide an operating subsidy to cover the difference between the total approved eligible operating expenses and revenues. Operating budgets will be adjusted at least annually, possibly more frequently if needed. The support services subsidy is based on the staff schedule and annual support services budget approved by BC Housing. After the close of each fiscal year, BC Housing will review financial statements and resident rent records and reconcile subsidies as outlined in the operator agreement. In the next few slides, we will walk you through the procurement process of this RFPQ, including RFPQ structure, the deliverable, evaluation process and criteria, response template and supporting documents, submission locations, and tender schedule. Different from past, this time BC Housing is implementing a 2-stage procurement process, beginning with the first stage request for pre-qualification RFPQ tender call, launched on June 27, 2024. The 2024 RFPQ is an invitation by BC Housing to prospective nonprofit societies to submit proposals to be pre-qualified for providing operator services for the supportive housing units created under Building BC, Supportive Housing Fund, SHF, within the province of British Columbia. The intent of this RFPQ is to create 5 regional source lists of pre-qualified nonprofit service providers for operating the supportive housing for people who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness across all regions within the province of British Columbia. The term of the source lists will be valid for 3 years of initial term from the date of establishing the source lists, with the option to extend the initial term by 4 additional 1-year terms at BC Housing's discretion. Once the site is identified, BC Housing will launch the second stage procurement process by inviting the operators on the source list pertaining to the site region to respond to a request for proposal, RFP, by submitting a proposal on operating the identified site, including operating budget, staffing schedule, current operational capacity, and service plan specific to the identified site. Operator whose proposal provides the best solution to BC Housing, and in some cases, who demonstrates its capacity to support rapid mobilization of the services, will be reached out for agreement and budget negotiation process. The first stage of the procurement process is the request for pre-qualification, RFPQ. There are 5 parts in the RFPQ tender document. Let us walk you through one by one. Part 1 is Introduction. It provides the detailed information about the supportive housing program, procurement process, operator agreement and terms, items required upon notice of award, and other information related to the procurement process. Part 2 is the deliverables. It describes detailed requirements and service expectations from the selected operators in operating supportive housing units, including operator eligibility, core services, resident eligibility, support services, property management services, community and partnerships, staff management, budget requirement, reconciliation, equity, and diversity. As an eligible operator, the selected operator shall operate as a nonprofit entity and remain in good standing with appropriate registry. The Core Services section has listed key service requirements from the selected operator for operating supportive housing site. The selected operator is requested to adhere to all the requirements set out in the Supportive Housing Fund Operator Sample Agreement attached as Appendix A. All residents participating in supportive housing program must be experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness with an income at or less than housing income limits and must be placed in a residential unit appropriate to their household size as determined by BC Housing from time to time. The selected operator is requested to use all efforts to minimize vacancies and maintain full occupancy of the site. The selected operator may offer a variety of programs and support services tailored to the operator's mandate and the unique needs of residents and in alignment with the Supportive Housing Fund Program framework. The core support services have also been listed in the Part 2 of the tender document. In Part 2, it also describes the requirements related to site maintenance and property management services, community and partnerships, staff management, and budget. Respondents are requested to carefully review these requirements prior to prepare their submissions. BC Housing is committed to reconciliation, equity, and diversity. It is expected that respondents have programs that actively support these processes and are involved in activities aimed at boosting opportunities for Indigenous and equity-seeking groups. Part 3 provides the detailed evaluation process and criteria for this RFPQ tender call. The evaluation contains 3 steps. The first step is Minimum Requirement Check. Respondents must include Appendix B, Submission Form, Appendix C, Identified Region or Regions, and Community or Communities, and Appendix D, Response Template, in the submission to be eligible for further evaluation. The second step is the evaluation of rated criteria. Submission past Minimum Requirement Check will be evaluated and scored based on the rated criteria table illustrated on the screen. Respondents are encouraged to provide as detailed information as possible. Information not included in the submission will not be considered. The last step is to determine qualification. A minimum threshold score of 55% has been set up to determine the qualification. Respondents whose scores meet or exceed the minimum threshold score will be deemed qualified and will be added to the source lists of pre-qualified operators for the respective region or regions or communities identified by respondents in Appendix C. Part 4 of the RFPQ tender document is the Terms of Conditions of the RFPQ process. It includes general information and instructions, communication after issuance of RFPQ, negotiation, notification, and debriefing, prohibited communications and confidential information, procurement process non-binding, and governing law and interpretation. Part 5 of the RFPQ tender document is consisted of the appendices of the RFPQ. The Appendix D, Response Template, is a fillable Word format file provided space for respondents to provide their responses under each rated criteria question. Respondents are required to complete each section in the template and include respondent's name at the beginning of the template. Please attach additional pages only if the space provided in the template is not sufficient. Detailed information is encouraged but must be relevant. Please allow plenty of time to complete and check information included in the submission. You can change the submission and resubmit it at any time before the submission deadline through the same channel you originally submitted. However, no change is allowed after the submission deadline. For this tender call, respondents are requested to submit their submissions through either BC Bid, which is the preferred method, or through email to buildingbc@bchousing.org. Proponents shall choose one submission location, not both. For assistance using BC Bid, please visit BC Bid at www.bcbid.gov.bc.ca or call BC Bid Help Desk at 250-387-7301. This slide illustrates the RFPQ schedule for the tender call. You can also find it in Section 3.1.1 of the RFPQ document. The submission deadline for this tender call is November 8, 2024 by 2 p.m. Please make sure give yourself sufficient time to prepare and submit the responses on or before the submission deadline. Late submission will not be accepted. During the tender call, respondents shall submit any related questions through email to buildingbc@bchousing.org by the deadline for questions, which is August 23, 2024 by 2 p.m. BC Housing will prepare an addendum to include responses to the questions and post it prior to the addenda deadline, which is September 13, 2024. Please note, inquiry through other channels will not be responded. Thank you for watching Building BC Supportive Housing Fund Pre-Qualification Information Session. We are looking forward to your participation in this opportunity.